This is the complete video of why Florida condos are going out of control. Not just in inventory, not just in association fees, but in general, why is there such a big problem in Florida with our condos? I'm going to go over all the facts from the history of what happened just a few short years ago to where we are today and all the legal implications that ended up happening as well and where it could go in the future. So we have a lot to cover here. Let's get started. So it all started with the collapse on June 24th, 2021. At 1:22 a.m., the Champlain Towers in Surfside, which is a suburb of Miami, in the Miami area, the Champlain Towers collapsed. The Champlain Towers were a 12-story beachfront condominium with a total of 136 units, and over 50% of the entire condo complex collapsed, killing 98 people. Out of the rubble, 4 people were rescued, but only 3 survived. So unfortunately, there was a catastrophe. And what makes it so much worse is that there were plenty of warning signs. There were people who submitted documentation and proof of a faulty structural integrity. And the part of the tower that did not collapse, 35 people were rescued from there. So there's a little bit of good news, but overall, this was the catalyst that made the Florida legislature pass new laws that we'll get into a little bit later, and it caused lawsuits and a new site for redevelopment. 10 days after the collapse, the rest of the structure was completely demolished. And lots of studies have begun since then to figure out what happened, how can we prevent it, and whose fault is it? Because you know how it goes. Lawsuits, they always want to know whose fault was it. Guys, I would love a subscribe, I would love a comment, and I would love a like. It helps me support the channel and pretty much bring you as much data and information I can. So please click that like button and let's get right back into what the heck happened. So what happened? Why did a giant building 12 stories high collapse with no warning? Well, the truth is there was plenty of warnings, okay? But here's why. Because in short, it was the long-term degradation of the reinforced concrete structural supports in the basement, basically. And the basement is the parking garage, also underneath the pool, which is probably linked to the problem, but I think we'll never know. I mean, think about it this way. When you mix water with steel, what do you get? You get rust and you get compromised steel structures. So the concrete is reinforced with steel, and that started to rot away and corrode, and basically it was a hazard. Now in June 2021 is when the collapse happened, but guess when the first report of this was? Guess when the first person raised the bell to the association saying, hey, we got a problem here, we need to address it? It was 2018. And then in April 2021, just a couple months, just 5 months before the actual collapse, guess what a new structural inspection revealed? They said it is, quote unquote, much worse. Now, obviously 3 years have passed, and that's a lot of time to allow the structure to get a lot worse. And only 5 months later came the collapse. So they allowed 3 years to go by before they did anything about it. But here's the irony. Here's the worst part of all, is that after the second, much worse inspection, what they did is the board voted. And they finally said, okay, enough is enough. It is deteriorated more than we want. We have to do something about it. And they voted and they approved a $15 million remedy project. The sad thing is, this never got started. It makes you wonder, where would we be if in 2018 they would have voted to do this? What if they were 3 years ahead? Would it have made a difference? Would that have prevented the collapse? Maybe, but maybe not, because truly we'll never know how bad the deterioration already was in 2018. But in 2021, it got much worse. Now, the Surfside collapse is tied as the third deadliest non-deliberate structural engineering failure in all of America. And they are tied with the Knickerbocker Theater, which collapsed in 1917 in Washington, D.C. So over 100 years later. And how is it possible that we had such a catastrophic event? What would have brought people to not address this situation? And my question is, if you're an owner in there, or if you're a realtor in there, or a home inspector that has inspected some of these condos that have sold from, 2018 to 2021, did you not write something up? Did you not go in the parking garage? Did you not see what's happening? Now, the short answer is probably not. The realtors might have, but us realtors, we're not inspectors, and we're definitely not structural inspectors, that's for sure. But we still would have seen something, and maybe would have, cautioned our buyers or raised something up with the listing agent that, hey, there's a little problem here. Or what about you listing agents? When you take the listing, don't you go and be like, hey, show me where the parking spot is in case someone asks? You go into the parking garage and then you see falling concrete. Literally, that's what was reported. Falling concrete from the ceiling. Would you not have said, there might be a problem here, folks? I don't know what happened. Unfortunately, 98 people died. But in 2022, in May, the land was sold. And it was sold to a developer out of Dubai for $120 million, which is definitely something we're going to talk about a little later, about the value of the land and these types of waterfront, beachfront, Miami area, or any kind of really popular area condos that are old and not as structurally sound anymore. What's going to happen to them? Well, this one got sold and it's not redeveloped yet, but some people were saying it should be a memorial. Well, that didn't work. They sold it, and now someone is going to build ultra luxury condos, because these new condos that are going to go up are going to be between 4,000 square feet and 15,000 square feet. A condo, 15,000 square feet. That is huge. Now at this point, we have a name and we have obviously the location, but we don't have prices on this. Take a look real quick what the website is showing that they're going to develop at this site. So now, legally speaking, what happened? What did they do to try to prevent this from ever happening again? And the Florida legislature got involved. They passed a Senate Bill 4D, and this happened in May of 2022. So a little time has passed where they got to kind of organize and put it all together and make new rules for condos. But this doesn't qualify for every single condo in Florida. So if you're thinking about buying, know that 3/4 of the condos don't even qualify under this program, okay? But the ones that do, their costs got increased. Here's what the bill basically does. It's a statewide inspection program for buildings that are over 3 stories high and 30 years or older. And starting on January 1st, 2025, every building that meets that criteria will have to have a structural integrity study, which is called a milestone inspection done. And that inspection will have to be posted to the public and be able to be scrutinized by everybody. Now, if the building is within 3 miles of the coastline, then it's only 25 years old or older that qualifies. Now, if it's over 3 miles from the coastline, then it's going to be a 30-year-old building. And then every single 10 years, every decade, those buildings have to get re-inspected. So we're going to start having a lot of inspections of the structural integrity of condos. This law also adds a new financial component, a required financial reserve component. And what that means is that as they age, as these buildings age, and some problems come up in these milestone inspections, the condo association cannot vote to delay funding for projects that are going to be in the near future or in the future. They have to have them fully funded, but not everything, but major structural components. So think about it like this. If your pool is deteriorating and it's going to have a leak if you don't have a resurfacing done, that's included. The roofs, those are included. Cracked balconies and railings and buildings, that's included. Why? Because the whole problem that happened with Surfside is that it was the rebar that started to deteriorate and caused the collapse. And it was visible over 3 years prior to it actually collapsing. So now, having an inspection every 10 years, hopefully the inspectors are going to be very cautious and they're going to write everything up. exactly how it is and what needs to be fixed. Now, the truth is that a lot of these condos don't have the money, okay? And that's partially what happened, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But now this is putting a law on the requirement from the condo associations that meet this criteria, that are over 25 years old if within 3 miles of the coastline, or over 30 years old if within more than 3 miles from the coastline. So even the condos in Orlando qualify under this law. A lot of them didn't have any money, so they have to do this catch-up game, okay? And we'll talk about that when we talk about finances. But not only is that structural integrity study, the milestone inspection required, which they didn't put money away for that. They didn't have money set aside for that. So they had to charge. Not only that, but then they're gonna have to catch up on some of the expenses that they've fallen short on that might need to be repaired pretty soon. Now, in June 2023, there was an amendment, which was Senate Bill 154, and that Senate bill made some modifications where they basically said that if you're within 3 miles of the coastline, then they allow the local jurisdiction to set how many years your building needs to be, how old your building needs to be in order to meet these requirements of the milestone inspection. So basically, the local jurisdiction can change the rule on that 25-year rule, but they're still required. Those milestone inspections are still going to be required. The best is they can kick the can down the road 5 additional years. Now, it also clarified that if the building reaches 30 years old by December 31st, 2024, which is just around the corner, I mean, that's 6 months away, then it's going to be required. That milestone inspection is going to be required. I mean, literally, that inspection has to be done by that date. So we are running out of time, people. And that's why there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, because a lot of the condos have already done their milestone inspection and have passed with flying colors. Does that mean their association fee went down? No, but does it mean that it's now going to skyrocket as much as some of the others and there maybe won't have as many special assessments? Yes, for some condos that is true. So condo fees went through the roof, and why is that? There's really 2 reasons. One of them is insurance. The other one is because of all these fees that condos are now required to carry. Let's go over both of them, okay? Insurance is a little longer topic, so let's just start with that one. So not only did all of this happen, but then we were struck with hurricane after hurricane, whether it was Hurricane Ian or Hurricane Nicole or Ida or whatever it was. In 2022, we had numerous hurricanes. And they struck pretty hard, especially Ian in my area. I'm in Sarasota, Florida. So what happened is there was a lot of insurance claims right in the midst of this mess of all these requirements for condo buildings. And the insurance companies did 2 things. Some of them said, I'm out. I don't want to insure Florida. Florida is high risk. We do not profit in this state. Goodbye, sayonara. I'll see you next time. And then the other thing they did is they said, well, if we're not leaving, there's less competition. We can jack up the rate and they're gonna have to stick with us because there's only a few more companies that are willing to actually underwrite those policies. And to make matters worse is they then started requiring the condo associations to replace the roofs. If the roofs were over 15 years old, even though those commercial roofs, those are rated for 30, 40 years sometimes, they said, well, we want you to replace it. We're not gonna insure this one. So what happened with the rates? They skyrocketed. And then there was additional expenses that were very significant. So, well, the owners had to pay for that. They didn't have that money saved up because if the roof is only 15 years old, maybe approaching half of its life, useful life, then there's no reason for the association to have a lot of money saved up for a new roof through collection of fees. Well, they weren't ready for it. And pretty much a lot of companies, a lot of associations had to go and replace the roof when their roof was just fine, not leaking, no problems. And let me tell you, it wasn't just Surfside that had problems. That's the Miami area. The entire state of Florida has problems with insurance. If you look at some examples, you'll see that it was kind of ridiculous. For example, let's go to Tarpon Springs, which is in the Tampa area, about an hour north from where I live. Let me give you an example. When they started getting quotes after Hurricane Ian to see, hey, under these new rules, we have to redo the roof. What kind of insurance quote discount are we gonna get when we redo our roof? What they found was staggering. One of the quotes came in at 13 times higher than the fees were in 2019. So, you know, if your insurance rate is $1,000 in 2019, just a couple years later, they ended up having $13,000. So that's the kind of difference it ended up being. Just staggering increase in insurance rates. So once again, that hits those condo owners. They have to have insurance on the building. It's required by law. So they cannot, you know, not have insurance and do a self-insurance program. So they had no choice but to pony up additional money, usually in the form of special assessments, just to cover that bill. And then their fees went up too. Why did they go up? Because it's quite simple. The fees went up because all the fees get spent, right? So if your fees are $300 a month, let's just say $100 a month of that goes towards the insurance payment, and then some goes towards lawn care and, you know, the pool maintenance and all that. But let's just say 100 goes towards the insurance. Well, when insurance grows by 13 times, heck, let's say 5 times for, like, you know, benefit of the doubt, then it's no longer $100 a month for your insurance bill as a condo owner. It's now $500 a month. So the condo buildings didn't have much choice. Some of them did. Some of them were very well funded. Some of them had really recently replaced their roofs, so their insurance premiums maybe only doubled. But on average, condo buildings from 2019 to 2023, they either, on the low end, 2x'd for their insurance rates, on the higher end, 5x'd. Now there's worst case scenarios because there's also, you know, anomalies that are lower and higher from that. But most condo buildings increase their insurance premiums by 2x to 5x. Now that is crazy, and that really does impact any current owner and every future potential buyer. And don't get me wrong, it's not like the costs actually went up that much. It's really a lack of competition combined with higher costs of materials than a few years ago, higher costs of labor than a few years ago, and the low competition created a sense of greed with the remaining competition. And then, you know how it goes. If all hell breaks loose, the government's gonna bail them out too. The government's not gonna allow their insurance company buddies to go bankrupt because of their state, okay? So they're also going to help out. So the insurance companies say, hey, let me just jack up the rates here. Let me protect it. Let me pad the envelope just a little bit more, meaning my pocketbook, okay? And that's exactly what they're doing still to this day. And we just recently had an announcement of 8 new carriers entering the insurance market. 3 of them are already writing policies. So that's good news, that's more competition, but we lost like 14 or 16 in the last couple of years. So, you know, it's just a little step in the right direction. You know, most condo buildings had their insurance premium double for about 3 years straight. That's kind of how they've been experiencing it. So what is the other reason why we have had big increases in the association dues, right? Because I know someone that had a $400 association dues, and right now it's just a little under $1,100. The reason is simple. Not only are these insurance rates that skyrocketed, making this way more expensive for everybody, but also the Senate Bill 4D, it also required to have a reserve study done. That means that people, the condo owners, are not allowed to vote to not fund a particular item that is going to have to be replaced sooner or later. So for example, landscaping doesn't fall under that. Landscaping can look crappy and that's fine, okay? But the carports, the structural integrity, obviously we've been talking about this, the pool, the clubhouse, the balconies, the windows, if the condo association is responsible for that, you know, the roof, the little roofs, you know, there's so many items, the carports, there's so many items that are common elements that are required to be insured and to be in a certain condition. So now the condo associations are forced to also pony up that money and show it in the bank. They basically have to say, hey, we're not voting no or yes anymore. We have to have either a special assessment or condo dues go up for a certain number of months so that we can catch up on the reserves that we are lacking, because now, as of the 1st of January 2025, the law requires it. Okay, that's a very big reason, is because it took the government to force the people to do what they should have been doing all along. And I understand that a lot of people are on retirement incomes who bought these condos. They retired to Florida as their dream destination. Cool, awesome, we welcome you. But it's not cool to vote no when something needs to be repaired. It's not cool to say, I'll let the next owner worry about that because I'm gonna sell in 3 or 4 years. It's not cool to put it on every other unit owner. That includes your neighbors, because you have an exit strategy. So the associations have to actually go and put these reserves back up to a level that is required by law. Therefore, condo fees went up. And they also had the option of doing special assessments. A lot of condo buildings had $100,000 special assessments. Basically, your condo could be worth $400,000, and now you need to pay in $100,000 into the reserves that the condo board is going to hold. Crazy, but it's happened on numerous occasions. Some of them were just like $15,000, some of them were just $30,000, some of them were $100,000 or even more. I know one building in Sarasota that has had 7 assessments in the last decade or so. Now the building is starting to look really nice, but you know what? The bleeding hasn't ended. They're still jackhammering that place, and they're still making it better, and they're trying to bring it back to what it should be and what it should have been the entire time. So lastly, we're going to touch on dumping the condos. What is happening with the condo market? It is not looking good. That's what's happening. Right now, there is no part of Florida that has a seller's market for condos. None of them. Just 2 years ago, we had so many areas where we didn't have enough supply. We didn't have enough condos for sale. Now we have so many, it's your picking. So if you're thinking about buying a condo, just know that there are so many options for you. So inventory is way up, and most of the condos that are for sale are over 30 years old, because those are the ones that have to qualify under this new law. Now look at this chart right here. This one is just for Southeast Florida, for the Miami area, right? South Florida has had crazy amounts of inventory, because that's where the Surfside collapse happened. And so that's where the talk on the street is like, hey, I don't know if you should buy a condo. We had this collapse happen, But look at this. Out of all the listings, the ones that are over 30 years old are over 15,000, and then the other ones are less than 2,000, okay? And then less than 10-year-olds, we just have less than 1,000 of those for sale. So as you can tell, the majority of the condos being sold are definitely the old condos that are subject to these new laws. Probably means that their association fees are also really high compared to the value. That proportion is really high. But the ones that are less than 10 years old, those are pretty much luxury condos. That's what most of them are. So those are already expensive, and they already have a lot of amenities, so the fees are probably high already. And now look at this other chart, and as you can tell, from Q1 of 2023 to Q2, 3, and 4, and then Q1 of 2024, we have been on a steep incline on how many units we have in South Florida. This is only for South Florida. So obviously, people are trying to get rid of their condos. They're trying to liquidate. Let me give you a quick example. In the Miami area, Cricket Club has 40 units for sale. Now there are only 220 units total, so almost 20% of every single unit of the whole community is for sale, and no one is buying. Very few people. Because when you see that 20% of every condo is for sale in a particular building, you have to ask yourself, I wonder why. Probably because there's a problem. Take a look at this condo here. $250,000, and it has spectacular views. Well, I hope this answered a lot of your questions, but please write any question you have below. I will do the research. I will make a video. I will reply to you personally, okay? Please let me know what questions you have about condos in Florida, and I'll make sure to get you the answers that you're looking for.